everyone. Hopefully this thing's on and everyone is joining us live as we do our second WaterWipes live event for the Early Days Club. So welcome, it's a pleasure to have you here. This Early Days Club is brought to you by WaterWipes. WaterWipes are the world's purest baby wipe and in fact have been recently accredited as purer than cotton wool and water. So there you go, making them perfect for sensitive, newborn and even premature baby skin. Following on from our first event in May, which was an absolute hoot, I hope you joined, the Early Days Club Live is back and it's a chance for new and expectant parents to connect, support each other and hear some of the stories about what really went on in lockdown. Stares into the distance, scary times. I can't believe that happened now. It feels like a different time ago, doesn't it? So myself and my lovely parenting panel are going to be chatting away for the next hour. You don't have to have your camera on during this, especially if it isn't a shower day for you, or if you haven't got a bra on. It's never a bra day in my house anymore. What I do like to do sometimes is just get 2 face masks, hook them together and create a sort of quite a loose hammock under my breast. Top tip for you there. Always done the same, of course. If you don't want to have the shower on, absolutely not a problem. But we would like to see your face if you do fancy it. Please also make sure that you pin the video of the event panel so you can see us throughout. So to do that, first click on the screen that's titled WaterWipes, then hover your little mousey over it and then 3 little dots will appear. Click on those and select pin the video. Now, the legal bit, by participating in this call, you give us permission to use your image for the sort of stuff you might expect, including our social and digital channels, YouTube, and in any promotional material we create from the event. Fancy. Anyway, now it is time to introduce our wonderful panel. So first up, we have Aurea Duba, the TV presenter, Strictly Champion, and father of a 2.5-year-old little boy called Roman. Aurea, how are you today?
I've got my cups. I've only got one, but that should be enough for the next hour. I'm really well. I'm not in my house, everyone. I'll just have to give you a heads up. I'm socially distant away from my wonderful manager, Miranda, who's allowed me into her house because I live in a signal and Wi-Fi black hole apparently. So I've had to come out here. There was a chance I might have had to do this whole thing from the back of my car. So thankfully I got saved. But I'm here with you and ready to be honest and talk and share all the experiences of the last 4.5 mental months.
They were mental, weren't they? This is, it was proper crazy times. Gets even crazier if you're our next panellist, Lucy Mecklenburg, because Lucy decided to pop her baby out sort of just on the cusp of lockdown, just before lockdown began, before we truly went into it. Is that right, Lucy?
Yeah, 10 days before lockdown, I had a baby and then I got out of hospital 5 days before. And it was really weird because I had like everyone round, it's all really excited. And then it was like, shut the door, bye everyone, you're on your own. Get on with it. And it was really crazy. It was hard. It was very hard at times, but
yeah, I bet it was. People, I hear there's the saying, when you've had a baby, you pull up the drawbridge to keep everyone away just so you can focus on a newborn baby. But you had no choice in the matter. The government had pulled up the drawbridge for you.
Literally. It was weird because I was actually postponing everyone because everyone's top tip for me as a new mum was don't have everyone round, have some time just you and the baby. So I had like my immediate family round and I was like, yeah, come round next week. And then literally it was like, no one can come round. See you in 5 months.
God, I really hope you didn't clean at all for 4 months. That's what I would be aiming for.
Do you know what? I tried really hard. But you know, sometimes I just couldn't be bothered. I just looked at it and thought, nah, I'll leave it today and the next day and the next day.
Who's going to see it? Yeah, the baby, he doesn't give a monkeys. As long as there's a boob around, he's a happy guy. Dr. Stephanie Uwe is also part of the Early Days Club in that she properly also had a baby during lockdown. So, Dr. Stephanie, how old is your little one now?
Yes, I did. So she is 3 months old now. So I had her just as the peak passed, which is an interesting time. I thought I'd be going in like right as everything was kind of getting to the peak, but fortunately things had just started easing off. But yeah, very similar to Lucy in that, you know, because I've got a 3-year-old as well, comparing how their births were was very different. So unfortunately, no family, no one to come and let me nap, you know, and hold the baby. So yeah, it's been an interesting time for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. I think it's going to be really interesting hearing your perspective as a mum, but also as a GP in this whole scenario. And we're also joined by wellness expert, author and journalist Caroline Ferran. Caroline is very, very pregnant.
Extremely pregnant. Yes, I've 3 weeks to go, and I've spent my entire pregnancy in lockdown, which everyone assumes has been a nightmare, but actually I've had no FOMO. I've never had to be around loads of drunk people, and it's been kind of lovely. I've had no choice but to slow down and relax, and now my only hope is that he doesn't come out in this hour, because then it will be literally the Early Days Club right now.
And you could call it WaterWipes. It's a lovely name.
Yeah, I am considering that, maybe middle name.
So I think it's a good place to start is reflecting on lockdown, because like I said, and like Ora said, it was such a strange time, and already I can't believe that I survived that. So my husband works full time, he was working from home. Me as bloody freelancer chops ended up doing all of the parenting for all of that time, and I just look back on it and go, how did I get through the days? Especially there was a period where my child had been ill, so we were all properly self-isolating at home. So there was 2 weeks where we didn't leave the house with a toddler. My child is 20 months old. So there were just points where she was having like 3 baths a day. Just like some kind of 70-year-old romance novelist, like, I shall have another bath and then slip into a satin robe. It was just anything to fill the time. Ore, how did you find it also at home with the toddler?
Well, it felt like a different world and a different period in our lives completely. It was only 4 months ago, you know. I was out for dinner with my wife and realised, like, there was a whole couple of months where you could only leave the house for 1 hour a day. 1 hour. It's just absolutely crazy. And our whole lockdown started, both Portia and I we caught the COVID. I came back from being on stage, and I think the whole cast got it as soon as we got home, because our show got taken off. And I got it, and then Portia got it straight away. So for about 2 weeks, we had no, we were sort of sweating, we were lethargic, you know, all the symptoms. Couldn't smell, couldn't hear. I was going to say couldn't hear. I didn't think that was a symptom. Couldn't smell and couldn't taste. And in all of that, we had my mother-in-law was saying, because we were slowly getting better, my mother-in-law said it would be a really good idea to take advantage of the time and maybe get Roman to start potty training. And we're like, okay, well, I'm basically on my deathbed here, but okay, if you say so, yeah. So if you get potty, why don't you get him sat on it? It backfired so badly, not literally, but essentially he started stool holding. So not only was he not going on the potty, he wasn't going at all, which then just started his constipation. So we had constipation for, the period was like 2 months, I think. But there was one glorious moment when I had, because I could taste but I couldn't smell. And I just remember going out into the hallway and my son was sort of mucking around in there. And I don't think I've ever had such a most glorious feeling of smelling my own son's poo than when, after sort of 10 days of not being able to smell, he'd had 3 days of constipation at the time. Then it, like, the waft just went up and through me, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. So that was kind of how we set the tone for our lockdown. Like, the smell of poo was the best thing in the world. I don't know. How about you? How about you guys? I don't know.
Well, I think I can, on behalf of everyone, say, Ore, thank you for teaching us the phrase stool holding. Let's get it trending on Twitter. That's a phrase. Who knew that was a thing? Is your son a bit of a performer like you? Did you do any dancing with your son?
Yeah, actually, it's been lovely because we, like I said, I'd spent quite a lot of the last year leading up to March being away we doing a lot of stage work, so I wasn't at home a lot. But it was lovely because of course we had all this time together, and I think a lot of our time bonding was spent in the bathroom, sort of singing and dancing. So there was a video that I put up, "He Loved the Tiger That Came to Tea" music, written by Robbie Williams, which you didn't know. It's an absolute banger. So that was kind of like our theme for the start of lockdown. But we would sing nursery rhymes, and whereas he can't kick a football, and he's not really one for catching, so sport might seem like it's off the cards right now, he goes crazy for singing Mr. Tumble songs and dancing along to The Tiger Who Came to Tea. So I think there's a good chance he might be a creative when it comes to it. I don't think rugby's going to be his thing just yet.
I love that. That's such a parent thing. I mean, he can't catch, but we think he's creative. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Lucy, so you obviously had a wild start to parenting, and I heard another poo story. There are never enough poo stories in the world, as far as I'm concerned. But a poo incident happened just before you were about to go on telly.
Oh, Ryan was on promoting his TV show Maximum Buy, and on Lorraine, and they wanted to see Roman, and just as I heard Lorraine say, "Oh, is Lucy and Roman there?" Roman just erupted, and I was like, no, please, no, not now. And it went all the way back up. His rom-pam was like bubbling out the top of his nappy, and I was like, oh no, I'll put you in your best outfit for TV. And I just didn't have I didn't have time to change him. I mean, I've got a record of changing a nappy very quickly now, but I couldn't do it in time, and I was just like going to ride, no. And and he was live on Lorraine with his poo explosion, which I've saved the footage in the memory box for his 18th birthday.
Oh, I'm sure he'll be very glad for that. That's amazing. Why do they always poo at the most annoying times, isn't it? Just when you're about to leave the house, it's like they know. And then you're like, I might as well just not leave.
Or sick.
Well, perfect in lockdown. Or sick.
Or
Either
sick.
end.
You know that you just you just get them perfectly dressed, you dressed a bit dishevelled, but still, you know, you're okay to leave the house, and then they decide to projectile vomit all over your hair and your outfit.
It does make you appreciate your own parents, doesn't it? Like how much of a horrible little disgusting, just little pukey, pooey worm you all are at the beginning. Your children are beautiful, I'm sure. But newborns, I mean, Caroline, you obviously have this all to come. I like to call my child, she was basically a slug until she got to about 4 months. Then she was like a sentient being. Before that, she's just a poo that cried.
Well, I'm like a slug myself in pregnancy, so I'm excited to not be the slug myself and let the baby take over that role and swap my vomit for their vomit.
Have you had bad morning sickness?
It's been so bad. It's been like, I haven't had the hyperemesis where I've had to go to hospital or anything, and I know that's obviously like the worst case scenario. But I'm very nervous about being sick. So for me, it was just like I was crying all the time, and then I thought I was kind of out of the woods. And finally, because of the restrictions opening up here in Ireland, I was able to go on a bit of a babymoon and in the west of Ireland, and we were on our way to a gorgeous 5-star hotel. In the roads were so windy and bendy, and I was just like, And I had just some syrupy, sugary latte thing that was just like bubbling on my tummy. And I was like, I'm going to have to pull over. And I asked my husband to pull over where this, miles upon miles of empty road. And he happens to pull over in front of someone's actual house. And I was like, I'm going to have to get out and go down on my knees. I was wearing I had a lovely pre-ironed trouser suit to check into the hotel. I had to get down on my knees. I started vomiting, right? And it was pooling towards me. And Barry was like, just move your knees because it's going to stay in your knees. In the same time, the house, the dog in the house comes out to the garden, starts barking aggressively at me. And then the owner comes out. I'm getting covered in sick. Barry's like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then I just jumped back in the car and I put the indicator on. I was like, go, because he didn't know what was going on. And then I had to arrive at the 5-star hotel covered in my own vomit. And because they had just opened, all the staff came out and were like, we're so happy to have people back. And I was like, please, just let me get to my room. I cannot have this conversation. So that was just another taste of the glamour of pregnancy that I have experienced this last 9 months.
Still so magical, isn't it? It's magical.
It's a beautiful miracle.
Oh, you poor thing. It sounds awful. But did you have a nice time in the baby moon? Did you sleep a lot?
I did. I slept a lot. I had nice swims because I had so much pelvic girdle pain as well. It was nice just to be able to float and feel weightless. So that was the perk.
Oh, I had that really badly. I ended up having to like hoist myself in bed with my own knickers, like hoist myself up like I was a whale, an actual beached whale being released. Awful. And Stephanie, how did you find things? So you're being pregnant, heavily pregnant during lockdown before you had your baby with your toddler. Was that difficult for you? What strategies did you put in place? Did you come up with any weird games just to fill the days with her?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost a lockdown of two halves, because the first half was me heavily pregnant, and then the second half was with a new baby as well. So the first half, actually, I quite liked it, because you go into that nesting mode and you just want to get everything sorted. And sometimes there isn't enough time, but with lockdown there was plenty of time. So we were sorting out, cupboards and things that you've wanted to do for ages. So we basically made tidying really fun for her, which I feel really mean doing, but she loved it. So she's gotten really good at ripping up cardboard boxes and putting them into a recycling bag. So that's what we did. That's what we did with her. And her nursery were brilliant, and they had some like Zoom classes and stuff for them to do every day. So she kind of had that to look forward to, I guess. So yeah, that was the first half. Second half has been a little bit more chaotic. Was more chaotic with a little one as well. I feel like all stories involve poo, don't they?
Always, all roads lead to poo.
Yeah, exactly. But I had my first afternoon by myself. So my husband, he's a GP, so he was obviously still coming in and out of work, even during lockdown. So my first afternoon alone with them, I thought, right, I've got this under control. I had the little one, my toddler was napping. I was like, this is great, it's peaceful. But then obviously baby decided to do like a massive poonami. I go upstairs to try and change her. In the meantime, my toddler wakes up in her room. She's like calling for me. I haven't quite got the baby dressed yet. So then I take a half doorbell goes, there's an important delivery that we're waiting for, so we all turn up at the door with like a half-dressed baby and then a crying toddler, and when they have to take a photo now to like prove that they've delivered the parcel. I don't even want to know what kind of photo he ended up taking. So that was an interesting first afternoon alone with them, for sure.
Well, I tell you what, if Corona's giving us nothing else, it's giving us a lot of good stories, which is very important, I think. On that note, I feel like we should move on to a little game of I Have Never, a little bit different to the one you would have played in Kavos when you were 18. But this is like a parenting I Have Never. So please, to all our viewers at home, if you'd like to join in, please raise your hand if you have done one of these things that I mentioned, or on Zoom there's a little hand button that you can click if you don't want to put your camera on. So if you have done any of these things, put up your hand. I will be able to see you, but of course there's no judgment here. It's a safe place, guys. It's a safe space. Okay, everyone. I have never eaten with my child lying on me and got food all over them. A big time. Loads of times. When you're breastfeeding,
really
it's just the
bad
child. Yeah. Your baby gets an orange stained head. I've never. Oh no, go on, Lucy.
Go on. I was going to say the problem is now Roman can use his hands, so sometimes like if I've dropped spaghetti, he like goes to grab it and put it in his mouth like a teeth, and I'm like, no.
I have never pretended to be so fast asleep that when it's my turn to get up in the night, my partner has to instead.
I do that with my dog.
Two hands go up. You do that with the dog. Caroline, what's wrong with the dog?
He gets very scared. He's really good training for when we're going to have the baby, because he's just a nervous dog, and I'm like, oh, you have to go get him, I need to rest, and I'm just trying to condition my husband to have to get up in the middle of the night. It's all part of my master plan.
Oh, good
That's
thinking. She's strategic.
Yes, she is. I have never turned their baby grow inside out and used it again rather than washing it. I don't think I've done that that one. That's really clever. I need to think of that
Good
one.
idea, yeah.
Isn't it?
Not if any of your Poonamis, Stephanie and Lucy, are to go by. You know,
Yeah, this
get
is
that straight in the machine.
That goes all the way through. All the way through.
Yeah. There aren't enough linings in the world to be able to cover that stuff up.
Okay, last one. I have never worn some form of sleepwear to the shops because I'm too tired to care. Literally every day. Nursery drop off.
Not even
Always in my active wear. Yeah.
Don't
Always
even
look
have
like
a child
I'm
yet, and
going
I'm
to
guilty of
work out.
this.
Yes, Caroline. Again, you're preparing. You're going to absolutely smash this. Showering is for losers. That's what I say. Okay, now it's interesting talking about obviously our experiences, but everyone has had a different experience during lockdown. So we asked some of you guys to get in touch and send us some videos to tell us what your lockdown experience was like. And we've got a little video to show.
As a dad, it's been amazing spending so much time with the little ones over lockdown. Even though it's probably been one of the most stressful times ever, working with a very demanding 1 and 3-year-old. Part of the stress is having to show them work dad mode and not being play dad whenever I'm with them. How have the other dads coped?
What are you doing, Luch?
Hey, get your head out. Chester.
Hey, musical pig.
Josie, say hello. You dancing in the water?
Listen. I play.
Oh, gorgeous. Thank you so much for sending all of that stuff through. It's nice to know that your children are not the only sort of disgusting, noisy ones, isn't it? That's lovely. I think this time has been really interesting in regards to, if you're having a baby, in regards to expectation versus reality. And obviously, I think that's always a thing when you have a baby, because things may not pan out in the way that you think that they will, and never more so at the moment. So, Lucy, let's talk about that with you. So what were the things that were different to your birth experience than you had imagined? What were the main challenges of giving birth in lockdown? Oh, I think we've lost Lucy there. Okay, Stephanie, we'll come to you. Very handy having two women who've had babies, isn't it? If one drops off, got another one. Stephanie, I'll go to you with the same questions. How was it different? You mentioned earlier that the first and second births that you had were very, very different. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, no one could envision that this would happen. So certainly it's not something that you could really, even once you knew it was happening, because no one's ever been through it before, you can't even, can't talk to someone, oh, you had a baby through a pandemic, tell me what it was like. So I think it was really just the uncertainty of knowing what things were going to be like, what measures were going to be in place. Would I be able to have my husband with me at the birth or not? And kind of, I guess, prepping for different scenarios. And also at that time, making quite difficult decisions. Like, we were in the midst of lockdown where things, all restrictions were in place, and deciding what to do with our toddler as well. Do we start thinking about risk and, we'd normally ask grandparents to look after her, or do I, prep myself for actually going in and having to give birth, without my husband there. Lots of different things to kind of consider, which was definitely obviously different to last time. Didn't have to think about that at all. I very much feel fortunate that it was my second baby though, because at least I'd kind of had that under my belt, let's say, and fortunately I'd had quite a positive experience. So I, you know, from that point of view, I thought, okay, well, I didn't, it wasn't as daunting, I suppose. So certainly throughout this time, I really felt for any first-time mums going through all of this as well, because, you know, it's the unknown, but also it's your first time going through it and having a baby, which is a lot to take on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I felt exactly the same way. I mean, since I've had a child, my love for new mums and mums in general is just off the chart. If I see a new mum, I just want to give her a massive cuddle and tell her that she's doing great and she's wonderful. And especially in lockdown, I just feel so sorry for them, for any women that's experienced that, any couple that has experienced that, because it's so overwhelming the first time you have a baby. And I remember just feeling, talking about expectation versus reality, coming home and just being, I'd had this, I think my expectation of birth was that it was going to be scary and the after bit would be lovely, but I actually found the birth, I had a planned cesarean, was terribly joyful, was just so gorgeous. But then the coming home bit was, I felt really quite blue for me, really dark, and I just couldn't ever imagine my life being anything vaguely normal again. I just couldn't understand how on earth my life could work with this new little crying psychopath with me. And it took ages to get over that, but I had the access to my family, my mum. Without that, I think anyone that's got through new parenting in this lockdown they deserve OBEs immediately. But Ore, let's come to you, because obviously regardless of lockdown, whether you are in it or not, having a child is a massive seismic event. Did you have any expectations that weren't met, or was the reality different to how you'd imagined?
I guess, and this will probably be the same for a lot of people, that from the start of lockdown to where we are now, you know, we've all been adapted so much because we didn't really know what to expect from the very off, or how we were going to react with just being in the same place for 23 hours of the day. So I guess my expectation, I didn't really know what to expect because I had been away, like I said, I'd been away for a really long time. So our dynamic in the house for almost a year had been that I would be away and I'd come home at the weekend, and then Portia and Roman would be together for the majority of the week, and then we'd only have a couple of days together. So I didn't really have a role in the house, if you like. As a dad, I kind of got I got the good bits. And so it took quite a long time, I think, for me to kind of figure out what exactly I was going to be able to do in the house. Because if you like, for Portia, the house was kind of her domain. You know, I came in, I just kind of slipped in. And what was really hard is trying to feel like I was allowed to be a responsible dad, as well as also like pushing myself to actually do more than just watching telly with him, because at the time we had all homeschooling, we had, you know, you had to really make sure that you planned that day to figure out if there was anything more than just sort of sitting about. So it went through like these different phases, and Portia and I had quite a lot of conversations, if you like, without saying arguments, about the fact that I was trying to pull my weight, but actually I felt like I was a bit of an outsider. Like, I've always said that I'm happy to be the worst one of the three of us. You know, I am the bronze medal winner of the three people in our house. And that's okay, but also I really wanted to be able to contribute. And where we are now is so much better than we probably would have been without lockdown, because the whole dynamic, like, you know, I feel like I've always felt like a hands-on dad, but now that I've actually been able to add that proof in the pudding, and Portia knows that like we've got a real functioning unit, and we've got a routine, and we can drop the routine if we need to, and we just know what each other is going to do. Like there's almost, and this is mad having been together for 10 years nearly, but there's a trust that we maybe didn't have before, that the other person's got it covered. And I always feel like when your partner knows that they're your priority, then the parenting thing will kind of work itself out, because it's easier to think, all right, put all your eggs in the basket just for your kid, and then you kind of forget about your significant other, if of course you're co-parenting. But for us, it was all about making sure, like, I've got your back, you've got my back. We've both got Roman's back, you know? So, we went through all those trials and tribulations for 3 months, 4 months, and thankfully, gladly, the reality is much more how we would have wanted it to be.
Do you think it's changed how you want to sort of work going forward? Do you think it's going to mean you're try to plan work differently, try to be at home more? I certainly think it's made me and my husband sort of just, you realise how precious it is to be able to have dinner together every night, which is something that we take for granted now, but would never have happened before.
Yeah, I know, and that we said that so much, and I know so many families will have had that whole work-life balance conversation. We've got it wrong. We need to sort of change it up, and if we can, we need to spend more time at home and do things together and appreciate each other more. And that is, of course, exactly how you want it. But you know, as we slowly get into what the real world used to look like, I'm a freelancer. You're a freelancer. And sometimes work just comes in, and you gotta make the hay while it comes in. I think it's just always important to have it in the back of your mind. Like I said, our family dynamic would have been very different had we not had lockdown, and it's a real positive to take out for it. And I think having it in the back of my mind, like, what is it like when all three of us are pulling in the same direction? If we can get that as much as possible, as well as doing work, then I think we'll be better for it. But it isn't as easy as saying, oh, well, let's make sure we've got 50-50 work-life balance, and then we'll all be happy, because it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, sure. But I definitely I think you're right, totally agree. It's just given us more to think about. And I think pulling in the right direction, all of you, is a really good way of looking at it. Lucy, I think we've got you back, which is wonderful. We're talking now about expectation versus reality. So in regards to your birth and your sort of newborn experience, did it live up to what you thought it would be like? Was it very different? I was saying earlier that I found my birth very joyful, which I wasn't expecting, but the newborn bit flipping hard, like much harder than I could anticipate.
Do you know what I said yesterday to my mum is I'd do the birth 10 times over the sleep deprivation. Easy, because I think that's been the toughest thing for me.
Oh, she's gone again, and I was just about to hear what the sleep deprivation was about. I wanted her to tell me just how few hours of sleep she's having. That's the conversations you have as mums, isn't it? Is she back? Lucy, stop teasing us. So you were talking about this sleep deprivation, Lucy. No, she's gone again. Oh my God. She's fallen asleep. She's knackered. Fair enough. Sleep deprivation, I can totally understand. I mean, I think all new parents can. You just can't, it's something you cannot prepare for. You can think in your head, I'm going to be tired, but until you've gone through that experience, it's a nightmare. And I think something that I can't imagine, so Stephanie, you'll be able to talk to this, about having a newborn and also having a toddler, because I know when I had my child, I could at least palm the kid off to my husband and sleep. It was, you've always got someone to have the baby, you always get a break. But with a toddler, there's no respite. How do you do it?
Yeah, it was hard. And my toddler decided to drop her nap during lockdown as well.
Oh God.
I know.
Put her in the bin.
I know we were trying to make sure she held on to it for as long as possible. I was like, she's going to be 5 years old and still napping. But obviously she had other ideas. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a tiredness like no other. It's hard because you don't get I remember when we had our first, you could at least, you're tired, but your days can, are fairly slow. With a toddler, they haven't got the memo that you're tired and that you've got a new baby as well. So they're still up at, 6:30, 7 in the morning, like jumping up and down on the bed. You're like, shh, don't wake the baby. But, they just want to play with them and everything. And even though that's very sweet, you've kind of just got to get up and go. And I think that's where also we really miss the family support as well. Very fortunately, both our sets of parents are really hands-on and were really hands-on pre-lockdown. So normally I'm sure they'd be here kind of, taking her out or, giving us that little bit of respite. But obviously we didn't have that. So we were very much kind of doing it by ourselves. And then sometimes you're outnumbered as well if it's just you at home with two of them, which is also hard to deal with. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that we've really missed the most, and one of the things that we've appreciated the most as well is how lucky we are to have all of that support from our family, because we definitely couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, I think the phrase "it takes a village to raise a child" is very true. And during lockdown, I just kept being like, I need access to the village. Why will the village not open? And thankfully, we're sort of on the way back to that, to the doors coming open. Thank the Lord. Caroline, can we move on to a section sort of about the new normal? So it's a strange new world. It's taken a toll on a lot of us in regards to mental health. It's been really hard. If you haven't had underlying problems before, it's been hard. If you have, it's been unprecedented times. How do you recommend that people deal with anxiety, sort of on a general basis, but particularly around pregnancy and with a newborn?
Yeah, it's such a massive question, but I think for me it always comes back to understanding why you're feeling anxious, and I think there's such a tendency to try and solve the problem first without ever understanding it, and that's kind of like putting a plaster on something and not actually addressing it. So for me, if you take a look at the pandemic alone, even separate to pregnancy or being a parent, when we feel anxious, there's a threat present, and it can be real or perceived. The virus has been a very real threat that we've all been feeling. We have felt this loss of control. We've got this sense of the unknown, of not knowing when it's going to change. And all of those things give rise to anxiety in the body. So we need to allow for that and to understand that. And then you add pregnancy or parenting into the mix. And then you're, again, there's more kind of stress there in the mix. And of course, I mean, it would be bizarre not to have felt a little bit overwhelmed and anxious throughout this whole phase. And especially, I think what people are struggling with now is that as we emerge from lockdown, people are feeling anxious about that too. And what I think I'd like to say is that, we have been conditioning ourselves over the last few months to be so hyper vigilant and protect ourselves because of this threat that we've all been facing. And we've had to isolate, and we've had to be, just be really, really conscious in a way, even from like a social anxiety perspective, not getting too close to anyone. So we're going to be a little bit like newborn giraffes trying to find our feet again. It's going to take a while to get back to that point of feeling at ease. And so the main thing is just to say, okay, well, this makes sense. I allow for it. I accept it. I understand it. I don't need to not feel anxious. And then you apply the things that work for you, such as whether it's mindfulness or going for a walk or whatever that kind of for you down regulates your stress response. And that applies to anxiety in any form. For me, is always assessing it and understanding it first, and then trying to address it.
I think there are sort of so many levels of anxiety I find around parenting at the moment. So there's the virus in general, which is something to consider. But then I also think there's like the anxiety of how you're parenting at the moment. So there's always anxiety around judgment from other parents anyway. But then I suppose it's even like the judgment of, say, for example, my child is back at nursery, but I have friends who aren't comfortable yet with their child going to other people. So it's sort of, there's always judgment with parenting, but there's sort of this new added higher level of pressure that's knocking around as well.
Absolutely, and I didn't realise how much unsolicited advice would come my way, and I guess everyone is of course so well-meaning, but I learned very quickly that especially when it came to like my Instagram, if I don't want unsolicited advice, don't go looking for it, don't ask open-ended questions. So I've kind of had one or two people who I say, okay, these are the people who I'm going to ask if I really want a specific answer. Otherwise, I'm going to be overwhelmed by everyone's opinions. And what I think I've realized is that people want to tell you what they did because they want what worked, what they did. They want it reflected back to them, what their choice was normal and okay for them. But what's right for you might not be right for someone else. So for example, I'm leaning towards a planned section, which is I think what you said you had opted for, and I'm feeling so I every time I bring it up, I mean I obviously don't need to bring it up, but I feel the need to justify it because, and it's not because people are judging me, but it's tricky. So and then when people, I mean I've bumped into people on the street who I hardly know who've been like, can I give you some advice? And you can't really say no. So the best thing to do is just say, oh, like thanks so much, like I'll keep that in mind, and then shut down the conversation or take it in another direction, because it is relentless, and I can only imagine it's going to continue indefinitely when the baby comes, when it comes to breastfeeding or not breastfeeding or anything like that. So I have to kind of steel myself for that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you've said so many things that hit the nail on the head there. I think I felt exactly the same. I had a planned cesarean for medical reasons. My one was for, and even though it was for medical reasons, I still had close friends say, "Oh, don't you even want to try vaginal birth?"
Yeah.
I was like, "No, I don't want to try it. Thank you very much." Like, what? No, what are you talking? How are you judging me like that? And like, how's it worked out for your child just because you pooed him out with nothing more than a blooming strepsil? I don't want to do that. It's not right for me.
Yeah.
And I think, but you do feel like you end up sort of justifying it. And can I say, as I ended up actually going into labour on the day of my planned section. So I had about an hour of contractions, and can confirm, much like an Aperol spritz, not for me. Thank you very much. But you know, a C-section is no ride in the park. I found the recovery really, really hard, much harder. There's no way of winning. There's no way of doing it easily. No. And I think, especially in regards to advice that you're given from other people, you're so right. People just want to reflect what they did, because if it worked for them, you feel so passionately about sharing the gospel with other people that people. There's so much unsolicited advice, isn't there? It's crazy.
Oh, I know.
And sometimes I remember, like, I'd be on my Instagram stories like, "Oh, the baby didn't sleep." And I wasn't asking for advice. I didn't want any advice.
Exactly.
I was just shouting at the wall. I just wanted to vent. And then people would be like, "Have you tried white noise? Have you tried swaddling?" I've tried every bloody thing in the world. Just let me know.
Well,
that's all I want.
I had that with ginger nut biscuits, where I was like, the only way that I can cope is to share. And for my morning sickness, I just had to go on my stories and say, "I've gotten sick again. This is crap. I'm miserable. I need to just share because it helps me make sense of it." And then everyone's saying ginger, ginger, ginger. And I said, I will punch someone in the face if they recommend ginger to me one more time. So yeah, I think pregnancy or parenting or not, we all need the opportunity to just let it off your chest. With that, it doesn't mean that you need a solution. You just need a release, and that's sometimes all that you need.
Absolutely, totally agree. Lucy, I think you're back. Fingers crossed. We're talking now about expectation versus reality. Have you managed to take your baby out, into the outside world? Does it feel weird bringing her into the public right now?
Him, but close.
Him, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Do you know what? It did feel weird, and I did have a lot of anxiety about it. And we went to a restaurant a couple of weeks ago, and I had two sort of major anxieties. One was feeding in public, because I'd never done it before, and it felt really odd because I'd only breastfed him in my house, and I felt really exposed. And the waitress got really close in his pram, putting her head in, and she meant really well and she was really lovely, but I felt really uncomfortable. And I said, I don't know if it's because we are in a pandemic or it's because I would be like that anyway, I'm not sure, but I felt really overwhelmed, and really my heart was going. I was like, I really don't want her there, but I didn't want to be rude to her. And then it came to feeding, and I found it all quite strange. And do you know what, in the end we had a really nice day, and it was like, I think once I've done it and I've been out and I've fed, I felt a lot better, and that I can do it again and it'll be no problem. But I think your firsts as a new mum, if you've given birth during the last 5 months, they're a lot later, like packing the changing bag, using the car seat, folding the pram up and putting it in the car. Like, I've never done any of these things, and really he's a big baby now, and I would have normally have done all these things before.
Yeah, that's so true. I hadn't thought about that. Like, I think from my point of view, I remember the first time we took her for a long walk again after lockdown sort of ease, I forgot the dummy. I forgot to have a snack, like these basic things, because I hadn't done it for so long. Yeah. No, it wasn't, but you're absolutely right. I hadn't really thought about that from new mum's point of view. Yeah, even like packing the bag, which is something you get really used to doing. Why would you have ever done that before? And yeah, people peering in. I've had that, people like sort of going really well-meaning, as you said, but it does make you go, like, just back off, especially with a newborn. I was mad with I wasn't mad, this is the thing. When I had my newborn baby, I wanted people to wash their hands and not to kiss her. But I felt some people did make me feel like I was a bit crazy. But I'm like, even if you think a mum is a little bit over the top, it's the most precious thing to her in the world. She doesn't know what she's doing. Just wash your sodding hands and don't make her feel bad, is what I would say. And Lucy, how are you feeling about feeding in public now? Do you feel more confident with that?
I do actually. It just, I think it's adjusting to it. And at first I went to a restaurant and it was a really hot day, and I had the muslin. Because obviously again, he's not, I think you'd normally feed in public when they're not really pulling things yet and think they would be a newborn.
Yeah,
and he's not,
very true.
and he was pulling the muslin, pulling my hair, pulling my earrings, and I was like, ah. And in the end I just chucked the muslin in the bag, and I just said, you know what, I'm gonna feed him like I feed him at home. You know, if anyone's got a problem with it, whatever. And you know what, I could see how he was latched. I felt more comfortable the longer I did it, and actually it's fine now. We've been to a restaurant a few times since, and I'm a lot more confident and comfortable, and I'm glad I brought it up on Instagram, because a lot of mums DM'd me saying, you know what, I was considering quitting as we've come out of lockdown because I'm so conscious about doing it, and seeing you do it's made me think, oh, actually I can do it.
Oh, well, that's really brilliant, Lucy. And especially, I think, obviously with the job that you do, it's sort of a strange, you've got the extra level of people maybe recognising you, so you feel even more self-conscious. So it's really, I think it's really lovely that you've used your platform to encourage other people. I would say from my point of view, I don't think there is a coffee like barista in East London who hasn't seen my boobs. I got them out. By the end, didn't give a monkeys. At the beginning, like it was like muslin. By the end, it was just hoik them out. And I'm sure we all had a great time because of that.
Nice early, just on that subject of eating out, because it's I never had to breastfeed, so I didn't feel that pain yourselves, ladies. But the fact of going out and being judged in public, my goodness me, whether it's any piece of public transport or being out for dinner. And we went on our first holiday with Romy when he was about 6 months, and it was the first time we were trying to adapt our new family life into what we used to have as just a two. So we'd gone out for dinner, and it was the first time we had to use a family pool and all these things that we had in our previous life, and we were thinking, oh, maybe we can clutch onto it. Gone. And we thought, okay, well, we'll go out for dinner, and he sleeps quite early anyway, so maybe if we can get him down in his pram, it'll be fine, and we'll be able to have a lovely dinner, and then we'll take him back to bed. No, he was not playing that game. So we tried to put the mesh stuff down over the pram, and essentially he just kept staying up, and then we tried to rock him, and I think what made it worse was the feeling like there was pressure from every other eye watching in the restaurant. You know, it was quite late in the evening, the sun had gone down, but for some reason, with all the pressure and trying to rock him away, it felt like it was about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We were burning up, and it took like about an hour to try to basically come to the determination he wasn't going to go down. We were trying to get him to go to bed because we thought everybody else wanted him to be silent. We were trying to get him down so that we could have a meal. And actually, that whole thing just blew up into a really awful episode where nobody won. We didn't eat. Everyone was angry. The eyes of everybody were digging into the backs of our necks. And after that one lesson, we went, you know what? We're just going to do whatever we feel right. And actually, we just kept him up. We just kept him later. He was 6 months old, for crying out loud. He didn't need to go to bed at 7 o'clock. We just kept him up till 9:30, and he was definitely asleep by then. That was for sure. So, that judgment kind of doesn't go away, but it's just how you manage it. And actually, when it's looking after your own kid, sometimes, without being antisocial, you just have to go, this is what I need to do right now. And I'm sure everybody else will.
And what was interesting in what you sort of said there was it wasn't even necessarily people around you were judging, but you felt that they might be judging. So it's like your anticipation that other people are judging.
That's true.
So layered.
And there was definitely a few. There was definitely a few eyes. There are always a few eyes, but you're right. Probably the worst thing is what you've got in your own head.
Absolutely. And it can be like, it's not necessarily always from strangers. I know like my mother can be like, she's walked past, like we've been with me in the park, and she's walked past another mum with a little baby who's crying, and my mum will go, that's a hungry baby, and I'm like, Mum, you don't need to say that. Like, never just, all you say to someone with a baby who's having any kind of crying fit is, well done, you're doing great. Or you say nothing. You do not comment on if they're tired or hungry. Just leave them alone. I'm trying to remember this if I'm ever a mother-in-law, not to be an absolute bitch. Now, we've been obviously speaking, having a lot of questions, but we wanted to hear some questions from our viewers. So I think we've got a couple of questions to play in. So let's go to them.
I just wanted to ask you a quick question around Black Lives Matter and how we talk to our kids about it.
Just a light and breezy one there. Obviously.
Have we got time for that?
Obviously, yeah, I think we've got like 30 seconds. That'll do it, I think.
We'll cover
obviously, yeah, during lockdown, there's been, a whole massive sort of movement really start and really gaining momentum. And it certainly made me think about how I will talk to my child about racism and diversity. And my kid is 20 months old. It's not like you can sit down and be like, have you heard of Nelson Mandela? So she's at the age where you have to sort of look at, I'm trying to think of the toys that she's playing with. What sort of diversity have we got in her toys? What kind of books is she reading? Do they have books with lots of different characters who all look a bit different? And that's the kind of thing that I can do right now, I think. I don't know, Ora, if you had sort of any more thoughts. I know your kid's only 2.5. It's difficult to bring up such a big subject.
It is really difficult to bring up. Thankfully, Upsy Daisy does look like him, so he's got someone to look up to,
and he's also a great dancer like Daisy.
That's right, totally. Oh my goodness me. I was loving seeing that in one of the clips that we saw. There was another kid dancing around it in the night garden like our one. Oh my goodness, it's like he's on something, like the people who wrote it, but it's such a tricky one, and how you approach it with kids, and none of us in this panel anyway have kids of that age where you can have an actual dialogue with them about it. But it does just come back to education. The number of times we've heard that you can't, you're not born racist, it's something that's learned or something as a behaviour that's copied, and that's why it has to be something that you help tackle with kids from early on. And I think for kids of a school age, it is about education. There is a Black History Month, but it has to be widened. Black history has to be taught in schools, because those perceptions, if you only think about it one way, well then of course you're going to obscure all the rest of it until I'm 34. I haven't learned barely anything about Black history, and I'm only trying to catch it now. But definitely for kids of all our ages, that sort of toddler or infant level, you're right, it is like books and a lot of the stuff that because they are so absorbent of any kind of information, more so than we'd ever know. But so those reading book characters, or the things that we see on TV, and actually, my sister does it way better than I do, but she will look at the bookstore or the library and be like, okay, I'm getting that one because I want my kid to know that there are other people that look like him, and similarly for their friends to know that there are other people that just look different, and make sure that they love everybody as much as anybody else. So we ain't got time to cover that whole chapter, but I totally agree that it's just, we got to start it early and just make sure that everybody knows that everybody's just as important and as equal as everybody else.
With Upsy Daisy as the poster girl. Who knew?
She's the one.
She's the one.
I'm literally going through the tune of the Upsy Daisy in my head right now.
Yeah, stop that. One more question. Let's go to that.
As a parent, what's the main thing you'll take away from lockdown?
Oh, that's a big one. What's the main thing we'll take away from lockdown? Let's start with Dr. Stephanie.
So I think it's probably what I alluded to a little bit earlier, which is that it's really hard to do it all alone, in terms of just, parenting in general, kind of having a child, certainly with us now, kind of juggling too. So that phrase, I know it's bandied around a lot, but it takes a village is completely true. And I'm so thankful for all of the support we have, and my take-home message as well to other new parents, or anyone in a similar position, would be that it's okay to ask for help, and if you need it, please ask for that, whether or not that's medical help, for example, from someone like your GP, or if it's psychological support, or just support from friends and family. Don't be afraid to ask for it, because we all need it.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Lucy, what were the main things that you've been taking away from lockdown?
think actually it's been a sort of it's been up and down as a dynamic at home, and I think you learn to appreciate each other a lot more. Obviously we've never done this before, having a baby together, but you really appreciate each other and how much they're doing. Like Ryan became the chef and helped with cleaning, and held him while I had a nap because I was doing all the feeding and he couldn't get, like, obviously do that because I was breastfeeding. But you really appreciate each other, and it's sort of the little special memories you sort of bank a little bit more, because I think the fast-paced life that we have normally hasn't been the same for the last few months, and we've really appreciated everything. Bath time's really special, having dinner, as someone said earlier, together at the dinner table every night, and yeah, it's been a really odd time, but there are definitely some amazing things that I've written down, all these special moments that happen. I probably won't by the second or third child do that, but you know, his memory book's been filled out, and we've really enjoyed, there's loads of really hard, tough moments, but also picking each other up as parents and saying to each other, you know, like, thank you so much, I really appreciate you and I love you. And I think sometimes life gets in the way of that.
Yeah, God, I think, if ever there was a lesson to come out of all this, is that kindness is king. Like, just even a little thank you. Just thank you for emptying the bin. Like, you don't need to say it, but it just greases the wheels of a relationship, isn't it? Thanks for bins. Anything to do with bins, thank you very much. Caroline, what do you think you've come out of lockdown with, and how do you think that will help you go into parenthood?
I think one of the best things that have come out of lockdown has been that we've all had no choice but to accept and embrace our vulnerability, which is common to us all, and it's something that we all try so hard to resist. But actually, you know, even in the nature of doing this chat, and technical things might go wrong, and we're all in it together. And I think for me going forward, when I become a parent, what lockdown has really taught me is, like, if you find yourself in a tug of war with this need to be in control, sometimes the easiest thing you can do for yourself is just to drop the rope, and just to that, like you say, their kindness. So for me, it's all about self-compassion, and self-compassion, allowing for vulnerability, and allowing for, I have to say this to myself as much as I say it to everyone else. I say it for myself as well, to just, you don't have to have everything figured out all the time. We don't have to know how everything's going to go. We won't always be in control of things, and when you can accept that, life gets a whole lot easier.
Thank you, Caroline. Ore, I'd love to come to you, but we're out of time. So I'm afraid, I think I'm going to tell you what your lesson is, and then it's don't hold in your stools. And that's what your son learned. I think we can all learn that.
Very good lesson for everyone.
Thank you.
Very good lesson.
It's a very important lesson. Thank you to all of our panel for joining us. That is it for another Early Days Club brought to you by WaterWipes. Thank you so much for joining us. To be part of #EarlyDaysClub, please go to the WaterWipes website, where you can sign up for regular updates, advice and information about all things early days. You can also follow WaterWipes on Instagram or Facebook for plenty of content, every bit as honest as what we've talked about today. To finish, we would love it if everyone would unmute their mics and say goodbye. So you can whistle, you can cheer, you can shake a rattle, raise your baby, whip out a boob. Why not? Whatever you like. Just show some love to all the new parents out there. So thank you very much, and good